At the halfway point of Lightspeed Rescue, having incessantly teased us as part of the end credits, the Omega project was unleashed and the Rangers were given access to their next set of Zords, the Megazords, leading of course to their Omega Megazord. This was another exciting one. I always felt it was such an achievement when the Rangers had gained spaceships during In Space. It seemed awfully grounded to be back on Earth for Lightspeed Rescue without a way for them to escape orbit again. Then the Max Solarzord happened. It was able to team together with the Supertrain, and marvellously, yet another space-themed Megazord appeared. Now we had one team of Rangers with mastery over Earth and space. The comprehensiveness of the Lightspeed Rescue line was really impressive. Let's talk the toy history. So known as Victory Mars during 1999's GoGoFive in Japan, what would become our Omega Megazord in 2000 was originally going to herald in a brand new next generation in TV interactive toys with Microsoft. As you know from the Max Solarzord review and I guess the Mega Battle figures, we'd already been introduced to Data Zord CD-ROMs, and now here was yet another technological integration. I think that was a very turn of the new millennium trope for toy companies. They knew tech for kids was rapidly becoming this rising tide and they didn't want to be washed out by it. But basically Bandai were teaming up with Microsoft to release Omega Megazord with a base station, and that allowed you to pick up phrases from the show using your VCR. Interestingly, the advertisement graphic promo hype sheet about it says, "Press buttons on the Megazord's torso to hear it speak." Originally I assumed the sound was going to be confined to the base, but that sentence makes me think that the Megazord itself should have had its own sound feature. Potentially speakers and a battery compartment, though I can't see where either of those would have gone on the toy. Maybe in the green Omegazord 3, that looks a little different to the real toy. However, the project fell through, never being produced, but luckily we still got the deluxe toy. Phew, close one. And while we're on the subject here, we may as well get to the differences from the original. Zilch, zero, nada, nothing, it's brilliant, go buy it. Shockingly, in a Power Rangers Zord first, they brought it over entirely accurately from the Sentai version with all of its die-cast parts on each of the 5 Zords. This thing is coated in the stuff. Obviously Bandai America had removed die-cast when bringing Victory Robo over to be our Lightspeed Megazord, and while Supertrain was adapted equally brilliantly to the Japanese original, I feel like Omega Megazord is still the big shock here because of how much metal is on this thing. This thing feels heavy, cold to the touch, somehow just a really premium experience. I guess Bandai was so proud of it that they even decided to use a window box for the first time to actually show you what you were getting. Mine's gone rather yellow. I do almost cynically wonder why this is. Was Bandai trying to show something impressive to Microsoft? Or maybe in order to keep pace with the Microsoft releases timing, did they have to skip past their usual process of Japan to America conversion and just order a straight reprint? But then that theory doesn't work if the Megazord did need some repurposing to include sound parts, and then that would ultimately serve no purpose in the final toy. It would make sense to go back to the drawing board. What's on the drawing board but the original GoGoFive Victory Mars? Or maybe it's just that you do need a lot of die-cast on these Zords in order for them to function properly. I can definitely believe that for the red, pink and yellow Zords, though would have a bit of a hard time believing it for blue and green. That's a lot of theories anyway, so one of them's got to be close to the truth. I think really time is going to have been the biggest factor here. Omega Megazord wasn't released in the UK and I don't think Europe either, so although America got it, I bet it was cutting it really fine. It looks like this is my only Megazord from Lightspeed Rescue to be manufactured in China. All my others, actually including the Life Force Megazord, were produced in Thailand, so make of that what you will. But yeah, a funny and actually brilliant turn of events in terms of the quality of the toy that we eventually got. Do you guys agree? I think it might have been cool to have the Microsoft version. That line, it literally is a new toy every day with new phrases and sound effects downloaded from that day's broadcast. But even if that was the version that we'd gotten, I'd be shocked if it could still work now, 21 years later, VCR or no VCR. The design then, and I don't know what to say about this one. I have such a fondness for it, but even then I could tell it's a little on the 80s side. The Megazords don't have their own inventive individual names like the OG Rescue Zords did, mostly because in the show they aren't featured in their individual modes nearly enough to warrant it. But something that they do have, which I really like, is that each Omegazord's cockpit windows actually correlates to the Omegazord's number. So Omegazord 1 has 1 massive window, 2 has 2, 3 has 3, 4 has 4, 5 has 5. It's a really fun design choice that leans into their numbering practices and actually reminds me of Zeo, where they numbered the Zeo Rangers based on how many edge points their shapes had. In the series, the Zords are initially deployed to halt an approaching asteroid, just the most 90s plot ever, which they are able to use their Crawler and Megazord modes to avert. The Megazords themselves are given quite short thrift, however on Ranger Wiki they are each given somewhat rescue-based functions. So Megazord 1 has side-mounted missile launchers for obstacle destruction, Megazord 2 is equipped with guns that shoot, get this, adhesive bullets used to plug hull breaches in damaged spacecraft. Yeah, we've got to love that rotating gun action feature, 4 of them as well, what a record. Megazord 3 is the most manoeuvrable of the Omegazords. Yeah, poor Green gets very little to do out of this array. Megazord 4 is the most heavily armoured of the Omegazords and is equipped with a retractable manipulator claw in its dorsal hull. Don't worry, I looked up dorsal hull for us, it's a nautical term meaning top of the vessel. Megazord 5 has a retractable manipulator claw in its dorsal hull, you're welcome, although its arm has the extra function of spinning its manipulators to use as a drill, not represented whatsoever in the toy. It's also equipped with medical tools for treating injuries during space rescues. So did I miss this on the show, because I don't remember Blue gluing anything together or Pink rescuing anyone in space. Please do comment where I can in fact find these moments, if in fact true, or were they just in the Sentai? Anyway, there you go, they all do something, even though to me they only ever seemed like spacecrafts. It's interesting, isn't it, that this was the 3rd year in a row where we got space-themed Zords. Though they do seem a little unambitious compared to the Mega Vs, I did like that they were more uniform in approach, and sized more consistently. They are the space versions of the Rescue Zords, and like the difference from Turbo to the Turbo Rescue vehicles, they complement each other really well. The Omega Crawler mode reminds me of some sort of insect, because of having 4 legs and how it walks, but I guess this was a standard technological approach for space planet navigation, especially in the 90s. The cannon, borrowed for the Supertrain Solarzord combination, will later become the staff of the Megazord, also has a good purpose here, and really helps fill in the chest plate that the Megazord 1 cockpit detaches from. Going on to its Megazord mode, and this is pretty rad, it's very retro inspired. It's also very shallow in depth, especially compared to the Lightspeed Megazord. It definitely seems sleek, and while not exactly futuristic, though don't worry, we've got all of next season to cover that ground, it is a really nice robot that holds up because of its simplicity, but also because of its really nice detailing across every piece. The Omega staff as a weapon is also great, nice to have something other than a sword again, and its spring-loaded ability to fire a mini rocket ties in perfectly with this theme. So what is bad about it? And honestly, once again, I can only pick up on really pedantic things. The first, of course, being that Megazord 3 has very little to do. As well as being the smallest Zord, if you don't deploy landing gear, there is nothing to do to prep him for Megazord mode, which is even worse than what had been the worst examples to date of Mega V2 and Centaurus C2. As already mentioned, the girl Zords, which form the legs, are my main problem here. The leg pieces themselves ratchet out rather angrily. I feel rather lucky that I've not had any problems with mine yet, given its age. I do worry for the durability of these pieces though. Let me know if you guys have ever had any breakages here. They seem a bit scary, so yeah, transform carefully. I really appreciate the design choice with the cockpit of the girl Zords shunting forward slightly and pulling out the crane arms. What I don't like though is that once you've done that, there's no way to click the claw arms out. So they're constantly drifting back into the Zord. They require quite a lot of care and attention to keep them level. Again, don't know if this is just me, but the heel stabilizers method does seem rather inelegant. It's a very unusual foot method to begin with for a Megazord. It's like a proper shoe or something. I guess it's good that you have the option to not deploy the foot extension if you either don't like them or just forget to. You can have Omega Megazord as roughly the same height as Lightspeed Megazord if not deployed, or if you go with the screen accurate method, it puts it over the Lightspeed Megazord but still under the Lightspeed Solarzord. There's also some holes in the feet, or rather dust traps, where you extend them, and obviously on the back of the Zords where the leg parts deploy from. They do try and hide this a bit with the landing gear, which I do appreciate, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem as elegant a solution as other Megazords, just having these hollow recesses there. I do wonder if this could have been done any better. Could the leg piece have been deployed more so like the Dino Charge Chargers, obviously much further down the timeline, and then still be allowed to ratchet for the crawler combination, but just rather than having to leave that part empty, would that maybe look better? I think it probably would. It certainly would have seemed smoother than having to do the 180-degree rotation needed to go from Zord to Megazord mode. But I appreciate maybe that was just beyond the budget and maybe beyond the engineering style of the time. Anyway, I believe I was trying to be pedantically negative, and in one episode of Lightspeed Rescue, the Omega Megazord is shown to use the Lightspeed Megazord Saber, and unfortunately after two combining Megazords with opening hands, we're now back to the old reliable close hand solution, and this isn't possible. That sword hilt will just not be clasped. What's good about it then? And hey, how about die-cast landing gear? Something I never knew I needed and which adds so much to this toy. Each Zord has at least 3 wheels, and while blues are a bit of a devil to deploy, they help give the toys more playability. You remember back to the In-Space Mega Vs, none of them had wheels, so it's nice and it actually gives you something to do with Megazord 3. I like its ski landing gear, definitely the most distinct. I just remember thinking back to when this was new, wow, they did it again. They've pulled off something distinct that I actually wanted. And this, along with Max Solarzord, were actually my first ever eBay purchases. This was the first time where I can actually remember having the internet at home. Like, how crazy is that? It's funny that Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue were positioned as this sort of government commodity of tech and science, and meanwhile at the time I was able to get more technological access of my own from the World Wide Web. Of course, it had to be off-peak after 7 PM and never when someone needed to use the landline to make a call, of course. Oh, how far we've come. When it's transformation time, if you include the steps of folding in the pieces of landing gear on Red's Megazord 1, there are 16 movements, all of its own, a line record. Megazord 2 returns to being a Zord that splits in the middle to form arms, and they actually include some nice detail on the inside of both halves. I've already ripped on Megazord 3 for being the exact opposite of that, but yeah, Red is definitely a fun, almost Rubik's Cube set of movements to complete. The very rare 5 Zord mid-transformation mode, the Omega Crawler, is a really fun combination, and one of the most practical attempts to bring 5 Zords together into a different configuration. Here it's facilitated mostly by the girl Zords being able to bend at the knee, which in itself is a very rare feat on Megazords. I'm pretty sure it's the first anatomically correct knee bending action since the Ninja Megazord. Unfortunately, unlike the original Dino Megazord, which gave us sort of hip articulation, allowing it to kick forwards, the Omega Megazord doesn't give us that, so the knee bend is purely for the crawler's benefit. And hey, unlike Microsoft, don't forget the final flourish of the Megazord's helmet. The unusual separating method reveals the Megazord's eyes and provides a bit more shape to the head. Omega Megazord is Power Rangers Zords at their best, a highly detailed set of themed vehicles, integration with another release, a rare combined mode, and a Megazord that was fun to put together and looked good in the overall line. They were just knocking it out of the park with this season, weren't they? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Anyway, join me next time when we take an in-depth look at the 5th Megazord of the season, though one that never quite made it over for Bandai America's toy line. Wonder if it was all the stress of that Microsoft product going wrong that derailed them, hey? So until then, see you later.